Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The audio, not the, oh, okay.
Where'd Tim go? Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. Please call the roll.
Mayor Delaquila.
Here.
Director Blah Pignatello.
Here.
Councilman at Large Bicker.
Here.
Councilman at Large Kranek.
Here.
Councilman at Large Traffus.
Here.
Ward 1 Councilman Biassiata.
Here.
Ward 2 Councilman Frondor.
Here.
Ward 3 Councilman Kukrow.
Here.
Ward 4 Councilman Petro.
Here.
Director of Public Service and Properties Luis.
Here.
Building Commissioner Morrow.
Okay, we'll begin with the reading and disposal of the journal, the minutes of the special council meeting held October 3rd, 2016.
Yes, Mr. President.
Councilman Frondorf.
Having read the council minutes of the council meeting dated October 3rd, I find no errors or omissions. I therefore move that they be approved as printed. And I will say that I did read the minutes, and this October 3rd meeting had to do with the Deer initiative and the legal action that was brought against the city. And it was a very spirited council meeting. And it kind of was interesting to read what people had to say. And I hope that as the residents portion of the meeting allow you to speak, I hope that you will express your mind.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second it.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Minutes for the special council meeting held October 3rd, 2016 have been accepted. Moving on to the consent agenda dated November 28th, 2016.
Yes, Mr. President.
Councilman Frondor.
If there's no division of the question, I move that we accept the consent agenda dated November 28, 2016.
I second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Consent agenda of November 28th, 2016 has been accepted. Are there any resolutions of commendation?
There are none.
Thank you. Reports of committees. The Planning, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee last met on November 21st, and our next meeting will be held on December 19th. Public Works Committee, Councilman Petro.
Mr. Chairman, our next meeting is December 5th.
Thank you. Community Services Committee, Councilman Bicker.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we met on November 7th. Minutes are on file with the clerk, and our next meeting is December 4th.
Thank you, Councilman. Police and Safety, Councilman Kranek.
The last meeting was last Monday, and minutes are on their way to the secretary. Our next meeting is scheduled for December 4th.
Thank you, Councilman. Parks and Recreation, Councilman Kukrow.
Thank you. Our last meeting was on November 21st. The meeting minutes have been delivered to the clerk, and our next meeting is December 12th, I think.
Thank you. Rules, Ordinances, and Ethics, Councilman Biassiata.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our last meeting was November 7th. Those minutes are on file with the council clerk. Our next meeting will be December 5th.
Thank you, Councilman. Finance, Civil Service, and Personnel, Councilman Frondor.
Yes, I'm happy to report that our last meeting was held on November 21st. That was a week ago. Our next meeting will be held on December 5th, and the minutes are on file with the clerk.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any appointments and confirmations?
No, sir.
Thank you. Communications, petitions, and claims.
I have one communication that was received by way of email from Michelle Tomeko. She writes, since I cannot be there due to my special needs son, I would like this read and have answers to the questions that I am asking. Thank you so very much in advance. And this is Michelle Tomeko of 7279 Summit View Drive. If the city council is supposed to be so transparent, why have so many executive sessions? And also, why is there an agenda for tonight's meeting in passing these issues on emergency? For what reason other than hiding it from public knowledge and having the public be able to look into these matters even deeper? Where is the law director in all of this? Why is this okay? How is it allowed that residents got bullied, parentheses, or feel like if they speak up against the city council that they will get bullied, in parentheses, even by ex-mayor / father of council president, when all I wanted was my questions answered? I have the right to know where and why my taxes, our city money, are paying for a guilty plea. I also want to know how it is possible that a person in office is still in office with a guilty plea. Isn't it in the charter that this is not allowed? Now for the questions that were not answered and I was bullied on at the last meeting. 1, I would like to see transcripts and feel the public has a right to see what was discussed in the executive sessions to have to pay for a guilty plea by the council president. Number 2, why is the city council using general funds to pay for legal fees? 3, was there any restitution or any other fees other than attorney fees? 4, did you have any kind of E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance, to cover said legal fees? Number 5, why should other things throughout the city be dropped? Parentheses, wage cuts, job cuts, hiring freeze, and parentheses, that would bring extra money to the general fund, and yet the city have to pay for your legal fees. 6, is it possible that with you paving way for city council to get reimbursed for legal issues, that your friends and colleagues on city council will follow suit with any other issues? 7, the question at the top of the page, why have so many executive sessions, and why is there an emergency in passing these issues tonight? Number 8, where is the law director in all of this? Please answer all questions above. Thank you very much. And that's all we have.
Thank you. Okay, council will now be open to the audience on legislation only. I'm sorry, Councilman Frondor.
I'd like to respond to the questions that were asked. There are no transcripts of executive session. This is covered by sunshine law. You're not allowed to take notes. So no transcripts exist. There is no special fund. That's why the money comes out of the general fund. There was no other restitution. Number 4, we have E&O insurance, but it doesn't cover this scenario. Number 5, wage cuts, job cuts, hiring freeze, and then I guess comparing it to legal fees. These are 2 separate issues. And is it possible that we're paving the way? No, the only thing I'm aware of that we're paving would be 10 streets in 2017. And why are there so many executive sessions? Because there are things that, if it has to do with contracts, personnel, that we cannot, legal issues, potential litigation, that we can't discuss in front of the public. And where is the law director in all this? Don't know.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, now council will be open to the audience on legislation only. If you have any comments regarding anything on our agenda, please feel free to approach the podium and state your name and address. Okay, moving on to ordinances and resolutions. Amended ordinance number 75, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Bicker.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and amend ordinance 75-2016 and declaring an emergency.
I'll second that, Mr. President.
Read it. I'm supposed to read.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
No.
Point of order. We're voting yes on reading it by title only.
My apologies, Mr. President. Yes.
That's okay. Thank you.
Frondorf.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Amended ordinance number 75, 2016, introduced by councilpersons Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance providing for the submission to the electors of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, a certain charter amendment pursuant to Article 10 of the Charter of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, for the purpose of allowing the electors to vote on the question of an income tax levy at a general primary or special election and declaring an emergency.
Amended ordinance number 75, 2016 has been read for its second and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Bicker.
I move that we pass ordinance 75-2016. I'm sorry, amend ordinance 75-2016.
Pass amended.
That's correct. Councilman Kranek.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? I'm just going to mention that we had previously discussed putting an amendment to our charter on the ballot, asking residents to allow us to place a income tax levy at a general, primary, or special election. Now that we passed issue 92, we no longer need to do that, and we are voting this down to clean up these books and get this off the table. Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
No.
Frondor.
No.
Kranek.
No.
Kukrow.
No.
Petro.
No.
Traffus.
No.
Bicker.
No.
Amended ordinance number 75, 2016 has been defeated. I will now hand the gavel over to Councilman Frondorf as I am recusing myself from B and C on our agenda.
We will now have the reading of the mayoral veto statement pertaining to ordinance number 118, 2016.
November 23rd, 2016, to the Seven Hills City Council from Mayor Richard Delaquila. Dear Council, Ordinance 118, 2016 is vetoed. Generally, a moral claim is intended to evaluate and possibly settle a small claim against the city because it is the right to do even though the city is not legally obligated to pay. Typically, these claims result from incidents like minor road damage to a vehicle or snowplow, mailbox damage, etc. Seven Hills does not currently have a formal procedure to consider moral claims, and I recently introduced legislation to council to establish one. A court-ordered criminal diversion program is intended to allow a nonviolent first offender defendant to admit his guilt in court but avoid the full consequences of a criminal conviction. By completing the diversion program, the defendant can keep a criminal conviction off his record after entering a guilty plea. In issuing this veto, it is unnecessary and irrelevant to relitigate the underlying facts of the criminal charges against Mr. Traffus. His moral claim is vetoed because it is not supported by any publicly disclosed factual foundation to show that the city is morally obligated to pay him. What is known is that an anonymous complaint about Mr. Traffus's conduct as a city official was filed with the state of Ohio, and the state sent that complaint to the city prosecutor. Since the city of Seven Hills is considered a victim in this case and the defendant is a councilman, Seven Hills was forced to hire a special prosecutor to conduct an independent investigation. After completing his investigation and finding probable cause of a crime, the independent special prosecutor filed charges against Mr. Traffus. Following months of legal negotiation and several court appearances, the defendant chose to enter a plea of guilty in open court before a judge in the Parma Municipal Court. His guilty plea was entered voluntarily and with the representation of his attorney. No city official participated in this process, which has already cost several thousands of tax dollars. As part of his plea deal, Mr. Traffus was permitted to enter the first offender diversion program, and the criminal charges against him were later dismissed when he completed the court-ordered diversion program. Now he has submitted a claim against the city to pay him almost $5,500 for his attorney fees. However, he has offered no good reason why the city of Seven Hills is morally obligated to pay his legal fees. There have been contradictory statements in the media on all of this, and as usual, the internet is rife with all variety of claims, exaggerations, and speculation. One councilman even asserted that Mr. Traffus was somehow targeted, but he failed to explain how this is even possible, given the participation of the state of Ohio, the independent outside special prosecutor, the police investigators, the court, or even the defendant's own attorney. By contrast, the independent special prosecutor is quoted in the media that he is confident of a conviction if this case went to trial. Mr. Traffus has been quoted that he entered his guilty plea to somehow save the city money, but does not explain why then he is asking for $5,500 more taxpayer dollars on top of the investigation costs and special prosecutor fees the city has already spent. Ohio's open meeting law, ORC section 121.22, requires public officials to deliberate official business in open public meetings. On November 14, 2016, 1 week after the voters passed two historic tax increases, issues 91 and 92, practically the first thing this council did was to approve payment of Mr. Traffus's claim. This was decided with no evidence presented, reviewed, or deliberated in any open meeting. Many outraged residents have complained to me about all this. The local legal community and other elected officials throughout the region are shocked that council would even consider this a proper purpose for public spending, and it falls to me again to try to protect the city's reputation. Council must be wary of setting a terrible precedent if it pays this claim. The floodgates would be opened for every other future criminal first offender in a Seven Hills prosecution who completes the first offender diversion program to also recover attorney fees from the city. In fact, those defendants would have an even stronger claim that Mr. Traffus, because the city would not be the victim in those cases, and those defendants would not be operating under color of an official city office as Mr. Traffus was. Even worse, how can the city morally deny legal fees to any future criminal defendant who is found not guilty after going to trial? Lastly, most of council is connected with each other as a group. They created and named the contract for Seven Hills. Most of them ran for election together and now control council. They share support for each other's political activities and vote together as a bloc to promote a common agenda under the leadership of Mr. Traffus. Absent any explanation for why the city should reimburse Mr. Traffus, the only other conclusion is that council is paying him just because he asked for the money. By using public dollars this way, council is sending absolutely the wrong message of special treatment by and for the members of the so-called Contract for Seven Hills Group. This veto is required due to the muddled procedure that brought this moral claim to this point, the lack of even a pretense of transparency, the unanswered ethical questions, and the failure to establish any substantive facts to demonstrate that the victim in this case, the city of Seven Hills, is somehow morally obligated to pay Mr. Traffus's legal fees. I ask council to preserve the integrity and reputation of the city and uphold this veto. This claim can be reconsidered in the future if these questions can be satisfactorily and fully answered as part of a proper, public, and completely transparent process. Sincerely, signed, Mayor Richard Delaquila.
We've now had the reading of the mayoral veto statement. We'll now move on to ordinance number 118, 2016.
Councilman Frondorf.
Yes, Councilman Kukrow.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read ordinance number 118, 2016 by title only for its first and final reading, declaring an emergency.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 118, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delaquila and Councilman Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. A moral claim authorizing and directing the Deputy Finance Director to pay Matthew A. Traffus of Seven Hills, Ohio, the sum of $5,490 for reimbursement of attorney fees incurred in Parma Court Case number 15 CRB 03959 and declaring an emergency. This ordinance is returned to council for further consideration. It was passed on November 14th, filed with the mayor on November 17th, and vetoed November 23rd.
Ordinance number 118, 2016 has been read for its final reading. Is there a motion? And before we entertain the motion, a yes vote is to override.
Councilman Frondorf.
Yes, Councilman Kukrow.
I move that we pass ordinance number 118, 2016.
I'll second that, Mr. Ponder.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, Councilman Frondor.
Yes, Councilman Bicker. I'm sorry, Biassiata.
Thank you. I'll be brief. 2 weeks ago, I voted yes on issue 118. I thought a gesture of goodwill would move the city forward in a positive direction. In the last 2 weeks, numerous residents have contacted me expressing their disappointment in that vote. Before I responded to them, like I do with every bit of legislation, I did my due diligence and First, I was not a member of the council at the time of the incident, so I don't have firsthand knowledge. Second, I tried to obtain the court records. They're sealed. So I wasn't able to independently look at the facts. But then responded to the residents that emailed me and called me and explained my reasons. I was not able to convince them. When I was campaigned, I said I'd be their voice. Their concerns, some didn't agree that this was a good use of taxpayer money. Others were open to the idea but did not feel that council, myself included, presented a valid reason for the reimbursement. And lastly, others disagreed with me because we passed it on emergency. So those are my reasons. I'm going to uphold the veto based on the resident feedback.
Are there any other comments?
Yes.
Yes, Councilman Kukrow.
Unlike Councilman Biassiata, I've had absolutely zero people in Ward 3 contact me, either text, email, or phone. And I wish more people would, even if they disagree with me. We had a really good discussion in the caucus room tonight. I do want to read what I read in the caucus room tonight for the record. In 2015, a very smart and talented woman named Diane Koski removed her candidacy from running for this council because she didn't want to deal with what might come from it. And I quote from Mrs. Koski's letter when she pulled out of the race in 2015, quote, "I'm not naive. I get how dirty politics can be. However, what I didn't see coming was how far our current leaders would go to keep their power and push their agenda. Like you, I had read the stories in the newspapers and seen the game being played at council meetings, but once I had a real look inside running a campaign and the people who controlled the city, I simply could not believe how much worse it is than I thought." She continues, quote, "A few years ago, city officials and residents were sued by the former mayor. Then just recently, Matt Trafis, one of two council members who fights for residents, gets labeled as a wrongdoer for sharing information to residents about how much tax revenue the city is losing because our biggest employer left town for independence. An anonymous tip started the investigation, which resulted in Matt Trafis being accused of something that was frankly no big deal. All he was doing was being transparent with the residents, and somebody didn't like that. I'm dropping out of this race because frankly, I'm not interested in being a target for future litigation and investigation, and after seeing what is happening, I do not wish to be part of this." End quote. So there you have it. A very highly qualified woman who really wanted to do this job and would have been good at it if she would have won, didn't want to do this because she didn't want to get put in the crosshairs. And I really do get that, and I don't blame her. But it's really sad that this is still continuing. And if this keeps up, it's going to keep driving good qualified people from wanting to do this in the future. And I'll be honest with you, I'm about a year into this, and it makes me have second thoughts. Why would I want to spend my time away from my family trying to do the right thing when I have a news crew show up and tell me that I've done something wrong, or an anonymous tip? I can't prove it, but I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, there are people that want to see this city go down because of the people that are currently in charge of it right now. And they'll do anything they possibly can to make that happen. And I think that's extremely sad. And those people are not sitting on this council. When you don't have the people that want to do this job and who care and who really want to do the work, I spent 4 hours today after I had lunch working on something for the city. I spent 10 hours the week before the holiday week doing something. I spent as much as 40, 50, 60 hours doing this. We can't go backwards now. With the resident support, we really just kind of fixed everything, and we're about to heal this city from years of bad decisions and ridiculous and petty political games. That's why I voted to pay this moral claim, and I will ultimately vote to override this veto. Finally, I'd be happy to explain my decision to any resident, my ward or wherever, who wishes to speak to me about it. Either call me, my number is 216-272-4383, or you can email me at jim@votekukrell.com, or you can even ask me to come by and stop at your house, and I'll tell you my feelings of why I did this. I'm happy to defend my position on this, and I'll be able to do that to you directly, either here, at your home, or on the phone, or wherever you wish. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I will, I'll offer a comment. When this council passed ordinance 118, 2016, Mark Colin, who's here in the audience, wrote an article that appeared online, cleveland.com, and in the Parma Sun Post. The online cleveland.com offers people the opportunity to comment. That article has been up there for 10, 11, 12 days now. Not one comment, not one. That article appeared in hard copy, and I haven't received one phone call, not one email, not one inquiry about what we were doing. And again, just to put something in perspective, when our fair city was a victim and sued by our former mayor, in that lawsuit were named other city officials, including Mr. Traffus, including our mayor, including our law director. And guess what? The city paid to defend them. Except for Matt, that's true. Didn't pay for Matt. So, you know, just so everyone knows, things like that do happen. Okay, any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
No.
Frondorf.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance 118, 2016 has been, the veto has been overruled.
Thank you. Moving on to the second reading of ordinance number 120, 2016.
Ordinance number 120, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delaquila and Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an agreement on behalf of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, with the American National Red Cross for the purpose of using the city's Seven Hills Recreation Complex as a temporary refuge for disaster victims.
Ordinance number 120, 2016 has been read for its second reading. We will now have the second reading of ordinance number 121, 2016.
Ordinance number 121, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delaquila and Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing the city of Seven Hills to enter into an agreement commencing January 1st, 2017, and ending December 31st, 2019, in an amount not to exceed $60 per full-time police department employee per month with Ohio AFSCME Care Plan for the furnishing of dental level 4 care plan benefits for qualified full-time police department employees, and authorizing and directing the mayor to sign on behalf of the city of Seven Hills any and all documents necessary to implement and give force and effect to said dental level 4 care plan coverages.
Ordinance number 121, 2016 has been read for its second reading. We now have the second reading of ordinance number 122, 2016.
Ordinance number 122, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delaquila and Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing the city of Seven Hills to enter into an agreement commencing January 1st, 2017, and ending December 31st, 2019, in an amount not to exceed $60 per full-time director and or administrator per month with Ohio AFSCME Care Plan for the furnishing of dental level 4 care plan benefits for qualified full-time city of Seven Hills directors and administrators, and authorizing and directing the mayor to sign on behalf of the city of Seven Hills any and all documents necessary to implement and give force and effect to said dental level 4 care plan coverages.
Ordinance number 122, 2016 has been read for its second reading. We'll now have the second reading of ordinance number 123, 2016.
Ordinance number 123, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an agreement on behalf of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, with InfoShred.net of Cleveland, Ohio, in an amount not to exceed $1,500 for 2017 shredding services, April 11 and August 15, 2017, for the city of Seven Hills.
Ordinance number 123, 2016 has been read for its second reading. We'll now have the second reading of ordinance number 125, 2016.
Ordinance number 125, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an agreement on behalf of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, with Lampion Companies of Wadsworth, Ohio, for the purpose of maintaining the traffic signals and lighting throughout the city of Seven Hills for the period covering January 1st through December 31st, 2017, and appropriating an amount not to exceed $6,000 for said service.
Ordinance number 125, 2016 has been read for its second reading. We will now have the second reading of ordinance number 126, 2016.
Ordinance number 126, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Westland Heating and Air Conditioning of Westlake, Ohio, for the purpose of maintaining the 7 rooftop units, the Soresco unit, 3 water heaters, 3 boilers, and 2 exhaust fans for a period of 1 year at the City of Seven Hills Recreation Complex in an amount not to exceed $6,875 for said service.
Ordinance number 126, 2016 has been read for its second reading. Moving on to ordinance number 127, 2016.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Petro.
I move that council suspends the rules under the charter and reads ordinance 127, 2016 by title only for its final reading.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondorf.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 127, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing the finance director to create a reserve account with monies in this account to be designated for infrastructure repairs with 5% of the annual income tax collections to be transferred into this account beginning January 1st, 2017, and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 127, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman
I
Petro.
move that council passes ordinance 127, 2016.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, I have a comment.
Councilman Frondorf.
This is the type of thing that we should be talking about and discussing in this city. Little known fact, go back to 2005, December of 2005. Now you all probably know that council is sworn in on December 10th, and then they typically have a meeting, council meeting afterward. In 2005, the very first meeting after council was sworn in 2005, they selected a council president, which was our mayor, Mayor Delaquila. And that council promptly got rid of a similar ordinance that devoted a percentage of our income tax monies for infrastructure, buildings, roads, etc. And what that did was we went from about $2 million in our general fund. All of a sudden we had a windfall that people could play with of about $6 to $7 million. And when it gets in the general fund and it's not specifically earmarked for something because it's a special fund, it can be used for anything. And that's exactly what happened.
Thank you, Councilman. I'm going to make some comments about ordinance 127 and the next few in my miscellaneous comments, and hold that for later. Is there any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondorf.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 127, 2016 has been passed. Moving on to ordinance number 128, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Kranek.
I move that we suspend the rules under charter and read ordinance number 128, 2016 for its first and final reading, declaring an emergency.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 128, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondor, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing the finance director to create a line item in the general fund entitled Rainy Day Fund, comprised of 2% of the annual income tax collections, with monies from this fund to be spent on items deemed to be of an emergency nature only, beginning January 1st, 2017, and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 128, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Kranek.
I move that we pass ordinance number 128, 2016.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, I have a comment to make about this.
Councilman Frondor.
This ordinance will bring in 2% to a special fund, a rainy day fund, that'll be used for emergencies. And if you think that emergencies don't happen in the city, they do. We had air conditioning units at the rec center that failed and had to be replaced. You're talking $35,000. We had a sanitary sewer line break over by Lombardo, $16,000. This is something that's prudent, and once that money goes into a rainy day fund, it can only be used for those emergencies. So I am fully supportive of this ordinance.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further comment? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 128, 2016 has passed. Moving on to ordinance number 129, 2016.
Yes, Council President.
Councilman Frondor.
I move that council suspends the rules under the charter and reads ordinance number 129, 2016 by title only for its final reading and declaring an emergency.
A second motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 129, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondor, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing the finance director to create a line item in the general fund entitled Capital Improvement Fund, dedicated to projects outside of the city's infrastructure, comprised of 1% of the annual income tax collections, beginning January 1st, 2017, and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 129, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we pass ordinance number 129, 2016.
A second motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 129, 2016 has passed. Moving on to ordinance number 130, 2016. I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read ordinance number 130, 2016 by title only for its first and final reading.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 130, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondor, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing $293,150 to be transferred from the general fund to the debt service account and designating the $293,150 for the debt restructuring payment and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 130, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading, and I will make a motion to pass ordinance number 130, 2016.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, I have this one is near and dear to my heart. For those of you who don't know what $293,150 represents, about 5 years ago, the city was in such dire straits that the council then, rather than address it directly and do what this council did, and that was put on the ballot and explain to people why we needed money, they refinanced the debt. They refinanced the debt, and now we have to pay it back. And it started in 2016. So our payment in 2017 is $293,000, $293,150. Next year, that goes up and it escalates, and it finally reaches almost $500,000 a year, and we have to pay that until 2023. So when I read emails that come in and say, let me just read it here. Your residents of Seven Hills heard your false cry that we were bankrupt. I want you to think about, we have to pay back $3.2 million by 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Frondor, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Is there any further comment? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 130, 2016 has passed. Moving on to ordinance number 131, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Kukrow.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read ordinance number 131, 2016 for its first and final reading.
I'll second that.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Councilman Bicker.
Sorry, Ed.
That's all right.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 131, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondor, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing $50,000 to be transferred from the general fund to the Parks Fund and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 131, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Kukrow.
I move that we pass ordinance number 131, 2016.
I second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Councilman Kukrow.
Thank you. I lived in the city 20 years. My kids are 14 and 11. Spent a lot of time at the parks over the last 14 years, coaching, helping out. This is near and dear to me. We're going to use this money the right way. This is one of those things that we're going to be able to make a really big difference with in the city besides the roads. In my opinion, if you can have great parks, you can really save the city from the way people think about it. I did an estimation once, and I have no scientific fact to back this up, but between 8,000 and 10,000 people from outside of our city visit our parks every single year. That's from coming to watch a baseball game where their kids are playing from Independence, Valley View, Broadview Heights, wherever. And the first impression of our city is when they come into our parks and see dilapidated parks. And that's horrible. And then they walk away going, Seven Hills. And then they drive on a bad road. So the parks are really important to me. And this money that we're putting in here, we're going to spend the right way. And I encourage every resident to come to the next parks meeting, where I don't know if I'll have it this next meeting, but the one after that, I'm going to have a plan, and I want resident input. I've already started to ask people for it, and we're going to spend it the right way, and we're going to make big improvements to our parks this year, next year, and all the years beyond. And we're going to be darn proud of these parks when we get done with it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. I'd like to add how excited I am about this as well. $50,000 is not a lot of money, but given the state of our parks currently, it's going to significantly help. For the past 5-6 years, I've coached a Little League boys baseball team, ages 13 through 15 years old. And a couple years ago, we started traveling to different neighboring cities and playing in their parks. And every city I go to has pristine, beautiful parks. And Seven Hills is an absolute laughingstock at the condition of our parks. So this is much needed. And again, it's not much money, but it's going to help make a dent in what we need to do to continue pushing forward and turning things around. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 131, 2016 has passed. Moving on to ordinance number 132, 2016.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Petro.
I move that council suspends the rules under the charter and reads ordinance 132, 2016 by title only for its final reading.
I'll second that, Mr. President.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 132, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondor, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance appropriating $100,000 from the city's general fund for a 2017 street maintenance program, which will include but not be limited to crack sealing, filling potholes, etc. throughout the city of Seven Hills and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 132, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Petro.
I move that council passes ordinance 132, 2016.
I'll second that, Mr. President.
Is there any discussion?
Yes, I have a comment on this one as well.
Councilman Frondor.
$100,000 is going to go into a street maintenance program. There are 1,200 homes in Ward 2, and I've run for office twice. And of the 1,200 homes, the first time I touched, and when I say touched, that means I spoke with someone in the household after walking the streets 4, 5, maybe 6 cycles through every street, probably touched 90% of the households. And then 2 years later, I did it again, touched about 90% of the households. And I can tell you what, one of the end results of that is I've had 2 hip replacements this year. But I'll tell you what, the number one issue that I heard, deer. Do something about the deer. Well, guess what? This council did something about the deer. The previous councils couldn't. They've been kicking that can down the road for 4 or 5 years. And the second was do something about the streets. Well, in addition to a $3 million road program, because we're able to pass a fire levy and an income tax levy, we're also going to devote $100,000. Now that's going to go to crack sealing. For those of you that don't know what crack sealing does, it gives you, if you have a good condition street, it adds life to that street. And if you have a fair or poor condition street, it buys you time until you can finally resurface it. And it's something that the city hasn't done. But if you drive in Broadview Heights and you drive in Independence, you'll see that every fall, you'll see these black lines all over the street, and that's called crack sealing, to keep the moisture out and the freezing and thawing and heaving of the pavement. So that's what we're going to do in Seven Hills. And I will guarantee you that within 3-4 years, the complaints that we've had about the city streets are going to be slim to none.
Thank you, Councilman Frondor. Any further comments?
Yes, Mr. President.
Councilman Biassiata.
Just real quick, I'd like to just confirm what Councilman Frondor just shared. 2 big issues when I was campaigning, 1 and 2, forget which one, the streets and the deer, and this council's taking care of both. I'm also real excited about all these financial measures that we went through. It's the installation of a financial discipline that I hope this council was going to achieve this year. So all the financial measures, putting aside money, is good fiscal management, and I congratulate all my colleagues for making this happen. Last but not least, the maintenance program that's specific to 132-2016. Very critical. A little bit of maintenance in this crack sealing goes a long way in the prolonging the life of roads in northern Ohio with the expansion and contraction. This is a great idea, and I'm going to emphatically vote yes.
Thank you. Well said, Councilman.
Thank you. Any further comment? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 132, 2016 has been passed. Moving on to ordinance number 133, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Biassiata.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read ordinance number 133-2016 by title only for its first and final reading.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 133, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delacuilla and councilpersons Traffus, Frondor, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an agreement on behalf of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, with Air Force One of Valley View, Ohio, for the purpose of removing and replacing the tritium supervisory controller for the HVAC system at the city's Seven Hills Recreation Complex with a new tritium N4 generation controller, including a 1-year warranty, and all appurtenances, appropriating the sum not to exceed $4,095 for said controller and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 133, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Biassiata.
I move that we pass ordinance number 133-2016.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion? Please call.
Yes.
Councilman Frondor.
Yes, I can't let this one pass either. We talked about emergencies. Well, this controller, $4,000 controller for the rec center. And what it does is it's a computer controlled device that we can set it and monitor conditions at the rec center. And what that means is in the evening when the rec center is closed, we can turn the thermostat down to a low level and save energy. And then when we need it, we can program it to come back up. And this thing failed because it doesn't have enough memory. This is an emergency. Otherwise, you got to manually do it. Every day you got to adjust it, and then somebody's going to have to turn it down and turn it up. And this way it's done automatically. And this is what an emergency is about. Totally unexpected $4,000 expense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 133, 2016 is passed. Moving on to ordinance number 134, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Bicker.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read ordinance 134-2016 by title only for its first and final reading.
Second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 134, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delacuilla and Councilman Traffus, Frondor, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an agreement on behalf of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, with Coxcom LLC of Cleveland, Ohio, for the purpose of supplying Cox Business Internet, technical support, and cable to the city of Seven Hills City Hall and Service Garage, appropriating the sum not to exceed $7,291.08 for a 3-year contract for said services and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 134, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Bicker.
I move that we pass ordinance 134-2016.
Second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 134, 2016 has passed. Moving on to ordinance number 135, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Kranek.
I move that we suspend the rules under charter and read an ordinance number 135, 2016 by title only for its first and final reading.
I second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 135, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delacuilla and Councilman Traffus, Frondor, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an agreement on behalf of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, with Coxcom LLC of Cleveland, Ohio, for the purpose of supplying Cox Business Internet, technical support, and cable to the city of Seven Hills Police Department, appropriating the sum not to exceed $5,027.04 for a 3-year contract for said services and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 135, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we pass ordinance number 135,
I second.
2016.
I second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 135, 2016 has been passed. Ordinance number 136, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Kukrow.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read ordinance number 136, 2016 by title only for its first and final reading.
Tim.
Oh, sorry. I second that.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 136, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delacuilla and Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an agreement on behalf of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio, with Coxcom LLC of Cleveland, Ohio, for the purpose of supplying Cox Business Internet technical support and cable to the city's Seven Hills Fire Department, appropriating the sum not to exceed $4,430.16 for a 3-year contract for said services and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 136, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Kukrow.
I move that we pass ordinance number 136, 2016.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Ordinance number 136, 2016 has been passed. Then I have the first reading of ordinance number 137, 2016.
Ordinance number 137, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Kranek, Bicker, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance to amend the appropriations of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio for the year ending December 31st, 2016.
Ordinance number 137, 2016 has been read for its first reading, and we will now have the first reading of ordinance number 138, 2016.
Ordinance number 138, 2016, introduced by Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Kranek, Bicker, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. An ordinance to make appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Seven Hills, Ohio for the year ending December 31st, 2017.
Ordinance number 138, 2016 has been read for its first reading. Moving on to resolution number 74, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Biassiata.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read resolution 74-2016 by title only for its first and final reading.
Second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Resolution number 74, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delacuilla and Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. Resolution to provide for transfers of certain funds on an as-needed basis and declaring an emergency.
Resolution number 74, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Biassiata.
I move that we adopt resolution 74-2016.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion?
I have a comment.
Councilman Frondorf.
For those of you who don't know what this means, this is a resolution that provides our finance director to transfer funds from the general fund, in this case, in the majority of it, into our bond retirement fund. This is our debt. So he's going to transfer $1,395,000, almost $1.4 million, to pay off our debt. He's going to transfer another $100,000 to pay off our debt. Those are the kind of dollars we're talking about. Obligations.
Thank you, Councilman. It's as real as it gets. Any further comment? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondorf.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Resolution number 74, 2016 has been adopted. Moving on to resolution number 75, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Bicker.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read Resolution 75-2016 by title only for its first and final reading.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Resolution number 75, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delaquila and Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. A resolution approving and accepting a temporary utility easement granted to the city of Seven Hills, Ohio by John and Marion Golembuski for the installation, construction, and maintenance of utilities, together with all appurtenances, on permanent parcel number 552-08-091, 1075 Nemet, appropriating the sum not to exceed $310 for the acquisition of said easement and declaring an emergency.
Resolution number 75, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Bicker.
I move that we adopt Resolution 75-2016.
I'll second that, Mr. President.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Resolution number 75, 2016 has been adopted. Moving on to resolution number 76, 2016.
Mr. President,
Councilman Kukrow.
I move that we suspend the rules under the charter and read Resolution 76, 2016 by title only for its first and final reading.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Resolution number 76, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delaquila and Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. A resolution approving and accepting a temporary utility easement granted to the city of Seven Hills, Ohio by David J. Ross for the installation, construction, and maintenance of utilities, together with all appurtenances, on permanent parcel number 552-07-084-681 Nemet, appropriating the sum not to exceed $310 for the acquisition of said easement and declaring an emergency.
Resolution number 76, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. President,
Councilman Kukrow.
I move that we adopt Resolution number 76, 2016.
I second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Resolution number 76, 2016 has been adopted. And our final resolution of the evening, resolution number 77, 2016.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Petro.
I move that council suspends the rules under the charter and reads Resolution 77, 2016 by title only for its final reading.
I second the motion.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Resolution number 77, 2016, introduced by Mayor Delaquila and Councilman Traffus, Frondorf, Bicker, Kranek, Biassiata, Kukrow, and Petro. A resolution approving and accepting a permanent utility easement granted to the city of Seven Hills, Ohio by Julio and Barbara Monaco for the installation, construction, and maintenance of utilities, together with all appurtenances, on permanent parcel number 552-10-065-3075 Shady Lane, appropriating the sum not to exceed $3,500 for the acquisition of said easement, declaring an emergency.
Resolution number 77, 2016 has been read for its first and final reading. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Petro.
I move that we adopt Resolution 77, 2016.
I second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Resolution number 77, 2016 has been adopted. Council will now be open to the audience on any matter that you wish to address. If you have any comments, please approach the podium and state your name and address. Is there anybody in the audience with comments?
Good evening, Jeff Brighta, 2341 Parmalee Drive. A couple things real quick. I want to thank Tony Bisciotti for upholding the mayor's veto and doing the right thing, in my opinion, on 118. I'd also like to mention that maybe you should thank the voters for passing those tax issues to allow these improvements. And it's much needed monies that the city needs. Glad to see that happen. A couple other things. Jim, you said you had no residents reach out to you whatsoever on the 118 legal fees. I've been told that on I think it's the Ward 3 citizens page, that's your Facebook page, that there's some discussion on that about it.
A Facebook page, I said no one reached out to me via email, text, or phone, or came by my home. I never said Facebook. Are you really going to be talking about Facebook comments?
Well, you
here?
said no residents
Reached out to me
you
in those
about it?
manners. Yeah, one person asked about it on my Facebook page, and that was it.
Okay, so someone did.
But it's Facebook.
Oh, so you don't. Yeah, okay. Then why have the
I
page?
don't know. What are you asking me, Jeff?
I'm just
Is Facebook
having
more
you come-
important than a phone call?
I'm just having you come correct on if any residents reached out to you.
Reached out to me personally? No. Someone made a comment on a Facebook page, Jeff, and I responded to the comment, but it wasn't directed at me.
That's it for now. That's fine.
Thank you, Jeff. It's good to see a planning commission member get active in the city even more so. As far as Jim's Facebook page, Jim has done an incredible job being transparent and disclosing as much information as possible to residents, and the dialogue on his page continues to grow and grow every day, and it's a great avenue for our residents to comment and learn more about our city. Is anybody further? Go on, Jeff.
You mentioned the transparency, and I was looking back at the contract mailing back when you guys all ran, and transparency was mentioned in there. Could someone explain why the 118 was done on emergency without 3 readings? It would seem that having 3 readings in the open meeting, and that would be the most transparent way to go about passing that.
Well, I will say, first of all, to address your first point, this city council has been the most transparent council that we have had. We installed a camera in the back of the room, and every meeting is broadcast live on the internet. I have continued to put audio of our caucus and committee meetings on my website. We have continuously asked the mayor and the administration to put documents on our city's website, but that fails to happen on a continuous basis, and that is very well documented. We're doing everything we can to be as transparent as possible, and that continues with all of the publications that we put out at our expense as well. I'm not going to address issue 118. I recuse myself from that, but anybody on council is free to speak about that if you wish.
What's your concern?
Well, the emergency, not, why was the emergency there requested for that?
Let me ask you this. I'll answer your question with a question. You were on council. Was there ever a time that you questioned why things were passed on emergency? Did you ever question?
Yeah.
Can you cite an example?
Not on the spot, sorry.
I didn't think so.
So can you answer my question about, was there a looming deadline? That's usually why things are passed on emergency.
It's your gotcha moment. I get it. I get it, Jeff.
Just came to me now. Just thought I'd ask.
Thank you. Anybody further?
Good evening. Leonard Schmall, 6249 Hastings Drive. I assume when all of you guys ran for election, you canvassed your wards and asked for suggestions what needed to be done, like Mr. Traffus said, the deer and the fixing of the roads and stuff like that. I'm sorry, Mr. Kukrow, or Frog. Anyways, you asked those things. Tonight, 3 people, Mr. Basiato said that his constituents called him, and after checking certain things out, he voted to uphold the mayor's veto. Mr. Krukow, you said that nobody, that's semantics with the Facebook thing. I'm not going to hold you to it. You said one person. So, Mr. Fraudoff, you said nobody contacted you. And shame on me, because I live in your ward and I should have called you.
Thank you, you should have.
But I didn't. And I didn't know about this until my wife came home. She was at I think the senior advisory committee meeting last Tuesday or something like that. And she came home. I should have called her. The thing I'm getting at, isn't it your job as leaders of your ward or, voted in to represent your constituents? Isn't it if nobody called you, don't you ask anybody in your ward, just a few people, say, hey, what do you think about this? This is a big thing, right? You're getting a lot of heat over this.
I didn't think it's a big thing
Did you
at
go
all.
ask anybody? And that's just a question. Did you go ask anybody?
Why?
Did you even ask your wife, hey, you're not gonna take some heat over this?
I don't know. I don't know where you're going.
What I'm saying, this is a two-way street. You want
Wait,
people to come to you, don't you
every
think-
ordinance that we pass, then every ordinance that we pass, I should ask somebody their thoughts on it? Is that
I
what you're
would
saying?
think so. Yeah, you're representing
Every
what,
ordinance.
I'm gonna
3,000 people?
I'm gonna cut this off and say that every ordinance and resolution that is on our agenda is posted exactly the same way, in a timely basis that complies with every legal requirement possible. They are distributed to an email list, of which we would be happy to put you on if you would like it for the future. It's posted outside of City Hall. Again, we try to post them online, but the administration has continuously failed to do so, even though there have been multiple requests for that, which again are well documented. Nothing different happened with this agenda. We've done it the same for all eternity of Seven Hills.
Okay, now, my last statement would be to reiterate what this gentleman said. Why is this thing being put up as an emergency thing? Why don't you put it off for a couple of weeks and let the constituents talk to you people? Maybe it'll be in the paper if this gentleman writes about it.
It was in last week.
Huh?
It was in last week's paper.
Okay, I didn't get last week's for some reason, I don't know why. But, maybe,
It was also on the news, Channel 5.
all right. But again, does it have to be an emergency?
Can I
Thank you
comment
very
on your,
much for your time.
can I comment on your first comment? I
Yes.
was at Hastings, so you can ask some of your neighbors a week ago, not this past Friday, the one
Yeah,
before.
my
And I was
wife-
asking them, I said, it's not even an election year. I said, please voice your concerns with me. Any concerns you have, and I gave them my card.
Yeah.
And you can ask some of your neighbors. I was
Oh, my
over
wife
there.
saw you and I think Trey, Matt, right?
Right, we were going door to door.
And we were
and I
asking-
think-
Sorry I wasn't home. I would have liked to talk.
Yeah, I would've too.
We were at your house, and I think we may have seen you pulling into your driveway right when we were ready to leave.
With my wife.
Okay.
I think I was golfing.
And we asked them, do you have any concerns?
Yeah.
And we gave them our cards for our contact info.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any further comments?
Nada Fleming, 6902 Karen Drive. About a year and a few months ago, I was looking out my front door. It was a nice sunny day, and a car pulled up in front of my house. It was the wrong side of the street to park on. And it's happened before, and I didn't want that person to get a ticket. And I've mentioned this to other people that had done the same thing. I didn't want anybody to get hurt or anything like that. So I yelled out the door and said, sir, please don't park there because you'll get a ticket or an accident may occur. At that time, I did not know it was Mr. Kukrow.
Thank you.
I have yet to meet him or have him say, this is my email. I'm reaching out to you. How are things going? Any issues, any problems? Hasn't happened yet. I do commend Mr. Biassiata. I know a lot of people in your area. They've all said you have been wonderful. So I commend you for that. I would still like to get your email or be put on your list so that I can find out when meetings are occurring, issues are coming up, which brings me to the next point. Why do we not have open communication out on the billboard over on the corner of Hillside and Broadview, letting people know that, hey, there's a caucus meeting. Hey, there's a
We don't
big
control it.
meeting,
That's the mayor.
and it's going to be, we're going to be discussing issues, specific issues that needs to be done.
That's an administrative function, and the mayor has complete and total control over that board.
Okay, and you brought this up and discussed it in a friendly way, without the sarcasm and, the arrogance.
Thank you.
I'm sure that occurred.
Thank you. And I do want to tell you that we did attempt to go to your house on Karen Drive when
I remember the day.
when Jim and I were going door to door in Ward 3. I specifically remember going up your driveway because I told Jim that this individual is with the VFW and has done terrific work for our city and the VFW. Unfortunately, you weren't home and we missed you. So we have attempted to reach out to you.
Okay,
I
still
would
there.
like to address your comments. I don't think you're gonna find a person, I'm sorry, to the rest of you guys, that has done more to be open to everyone in this ward and this city than I have. I'm sorry. I have an email list.
Do you have mine?
I have a Facebook group. I would be happy for you to join. I have not walked to everyone's home in my ward at my expense and asked them to join my email list in the last year. No, I need to find time to do that. You're right. But I am extremely transparent. I have hundreds, 350 people in my Facebook group from the city. I have hundreds of people on my email list where I send out a very long and detailed email about what goes on in the city. I'm a professional communicator. That's what I do for a living. I'm sorry you haven't been involved in that, but I've advertised. I put it all over the place.
Like where?
I'll advertise on Facebook.
I'm not on Facebook.
Okay. Well, you could certainly go to my website. It's votekukril.com and join up for my email list, and you'll get the updates from me.
Okay, that would be much appreciated. You had, Mr. Traffus, you had mentioned that we have the internet that's the television that's viewing this. How many people watch it?
I'm going to refer that to Councilman Kukrow. He kind of has spearheaded this project.
You can go to youtube.com and search for Seven Hills City Council and look at the archives, and you can see it's different for each video. People watch, they might watch them a year later. They're archived.
Any idea of what percentage
Percentage of what?
people from our community watch this?
I see about 200 some views for most of them.
Okay. So it was worth the expenditure.
My opinion, absolutely. This is archived. What people who are at home, they can watch this live. People are watching it right now. It might only be 2 or 3 people, but maybe they can't get out, it's icy out, or maybe they can't drive at night and they'd like to watch this. They can watch this on their phone in an airport in a different part of the world, in Abu Dhabi if they want to. This is absolute transparency, and this is great. It's archived forever. I love it.
I also want to say that I'm very sorry that we had not been communicating. I know there's a lot of people in our community that have no idea that any of this is going on, and that's a shame. And so I commend you also for supporting the mayor for the veto, because you were listening to your people in your community. I wish you would also hear the people in Ward 3 and represent us. And like I had mentioned in the caucus, I feel that now that we have raised the taxes in our community, the money should not be going to paying for attorney fees. It should be going for fixing our roads and everything else that we have in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody further?
Bill Maddy, 1363 Hillside Road. I don't understand a lot of the legal mumbo jumbo that goes on in running a city. I gotta say one thing though, Monday morning quarterback, you ever hear the term? Everybody knows what that is, all right? It's real easy to look at a game that was played yesterday and criticize the moves that a coach makes. One person in particular here, Mr. Frondorf, more than anyone else. I gotta say, you come across as a very arrogant person. I don't mean this as and very outspoken, which is what a city needs. But you made it a point to criticize moves that were made 5 years ago, 10 years ago in the city. You weren't involved with it at the time. You probably didn't know the circumstances, didn't maybe understand the reasoning behind it. But yet you sit there and, you put the blame on everybody else and you guys are gonna fix it. You're the redeemer. I hope you do. But like I say, don't point the finger at everybody else for the condition of the city right now. Decisions were made, obviously, they thought they were making a right decision at the time. Maybe they didn't. I'm sure you've made a couple decisions in your life that maybe a few years down the road you said, Jesus, I shouldn't have done that. That was kind of stupid. But at the time you had reasons to do it.
Well, at the risk of sounding arrogant, I started coming to council meetings in 2010, okay? 2010, 6 years ago. And what I saw happening in those councils appalled me. The attitude that people had at those councils appalled me. I sat in those council chambers right there, the caucus room. I didn't have one councilman come up to me. There were times I was the only person in there. I didn't have one councilman say, hey, let me introduce myself to you. And that we weren't on council at that point. There was one councilman that introduced himself. He's sitting next to me right here because Frank was on council at the time. But nobody else did. Okay. Nobody else did. There was you talk about arrogance. There was an arrogance that was ruining the city. And I'm sorry if I come across as arrogant, but when I got into politics, I said, I'm not here to be Seven Hills' golden boy. I am here to fix this city. We have had tremendous financial problems. Make no mistake about it. And I attended, I can tell you for a fact that before I got on council, there couldn't have been a handful, that's probably a stretch, of council meetings and caucus meetings that I missed, because that's how much I wanted the city to move forward. And I saw the people that were running the city, and they didn't know what the heck they were doing. They would have said yes to you, and yes to you, and yes to you, just so they would get reelected. And quite frankly, I'll say what Mr. Kruppel said. If people don't like it, that the fact that this city has turned around, that we're now financially solvent, and they don't like my personality, well, vote me out of office. And you know what? I'm retired. I'll go about and do something else. But don't complain 5 years from now when the city's back in the toilet. I don't want to hear it from anybody.
Okay, now you raise their taxes. This is supposed to be the answer to everything. Now, I don't want to see something on the ballot in 2 years saying you need more damn money.
You won't.
Because I know it'll happen.
You won't. You want to bet me?
I will.
You want to bet me?
I'll bet you a drink.
All right.
Okay.
Seven Hills Tavern.
All right?
All right.
Okay.
What is
My
today?
name's
28th?
I'd like to double down on that one.
All right. I'll make it 2 drinks. What do you drink?
I have a roll.
All right, November 28th, what would that be? 2018, we'll meet down there. If there are any money.
You better face me or Facebook me or whatever you do, because I'll forget by then. But seriously. I hope you guys fix it, or whatever was broken.
Let me tell you something.
But like I say, don't spend all your time pointing a finger at people that did things 10 years ago. You can't do that. It doesn't do good for anybody. All it does is it causes animosity amongst. Yes, it does.
And I have a different philosophy.
Look at the condition.
Okay, guys.
If you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going.
Nobody can tell you you're wrong.
Guys, the only thing, sir.
Plenty of people tell me I'm
Guys,
wrong.
come on, let's move on.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. And
28,
for that drink,
2018.
Jack and Coke.
All right. We go now? Vodka on the rocks with a twist.
Heineken, just a couple last.
All right, let's keep some order, guys.
Mr. President,
Let's give the floor to Councilman Biassiata first, and then
I
we'll get back
just
to you.
one important statement there was about asking for more money. I'm as confident as I'm sitting here tonight that for many, many years to come, at least I will not ask for more money. What my colleagues did, they took a big risk. It paid off. The residents, I thank you all for stepping up and passing these levies. But between 91 and 92 and the future economic development, in part through the guys sitting in the front row tonight, we are headed in the right path. And I want to get in on the drink bet. That's all why I interrupted, Mr. President. Because I can't see that happening. And I would rally against it if it ever came up. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
You gotta write that down. Just a couple things. Mr. Frondoff, I understand by you going back and citing examples. I don't look at it as casting aspersions. You're citing examples of why we're doing the things we are today. I understand that. I think that's great. Secondly, I think all of you guys up there, you've seen my wife and myself at these council meetings. And to say something to you, sir, you've never come up to me and said, hey, I'm Councilman Frondoff. Who are you?
I'm not gonna go there. I've been to your home.
I understand.
I've been to your home and I've met you there.
Well, you were at my home, but I wasn't there. You did leave a thing in my mail.
Yes,
But that's fine. Okay.
Absolutely. You pull.
But again, in person, at the council.
Look, I'm not gonna argue with you, but.
The last thing I would like to say, sir, is, they're casting aspersions about your way of doing things. And, I look at it this way. I can look at that clock and say, geez, or a young lady and say, honey, you got the face that would stop a clock. Or I could say, my God, when I look at you, time stands still. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody further?
Jerry Traffus, 990 Aspenwood Drive. I feel like I should walk around and introduce myself to everybody, but I won't. I was kind of curious about when Jeff brought up about the phone calls and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And Tony, I know that you changed your position on the legal fees from a couple of weeks ago, based on getting a bunch of calls or something from your residents to represent them. I don't know if it was 2 calls, 3 calls, or hopefully it was about 200 or 300 calls. But I heard Tim, and I think was it Jim also, that said that they got no calls. Now forget Facebook. Facebook is its own, it's its own thing. And I'm curious, did anybody else, Matt, did you get any phone calls?
I'm at the subject.
Or telegrams or emails or on the subject of legal fees?
Not one.
Frank, did you?
No.
Let's see, Jim, you already said no. Tom?
Not in regards to that fees.
Ed?
None, Jerry.
Okay, something's going on in Ward 1. My other thing is today, this is pretty historical. Tim, you mentioned this too, and it kind of rang a bell with me because back in December of '05, that was my last meeting as an official, a city official after 30 years. And I think it was the first meeting that I wasn't there that there was a huge decision I don't think anybody really knew. I remember me, excuse my language, bitching and moaning about it for, I thought, with the right reasons at the time. But this, and this is kind of interesting for everybody, this city, we collect income tax, and we get about 5 million, sometimes if it's doing great, we get 6 million a year. And there was a law on the books that said 50% goes to general fund for general expenses, and 50% goes to infrastructure. And Tom's nodding because he was one of the inventors of that a long time ago when he was on council before. So you got 50% for general expenses, 50% for infrastructure, sewers, streets. The first meeting, coincidentally, ironically, I wasn't there, and I heard you say this, as I think Brick may have been council president, that changed. And the income tax then was devoted 100% to whatever. It didn't have the structure of it being devoted to the infrastructure. And I think that that was a turning moment in Seven Hills' history.
It absolutely was.
Because what happened was that the general expenses, all of a sudden you look at your checkbook and you say, wow, I got another $2 million or $3 million of money in my checkbook. And the expenses rose and rose and rose. And then that money was gone. So the reason I'm saying that is because Today is an extremely, extremely historical day. This council, and I hope the mayor signs this legislation, today put 5% of income tax into the infrastructure, not 50, but 5%, 2% into a rainy day fund, 1% into capital improvements, 293,000, which is the equivalent of about 6%, to pay down next year's debt, of which we still have another 3.1 million, or 3.1 minus 293, $50,000 for parks, 100,000 for street maintenance. The equivalent of that is about 17%. Great start. That is terrific. And I just think it is huge to be able to note that this is a turning point, and what you guys have really achieved in a year couldn't have been done in the last 10. So I just think it's a crowning attribute to everybody in getting the financial situation and getting the streets and everything else going again. I know that you're not done. I know that, is somebody going to talk about the street program later?
I'm going to.
Okay, good. But anyway, I just want to get into the record that today's a big day. And I guess my last comment, I just hope that there's no anonymous complaint with the crime of the gross mismanagement of millions of having millions of dollars of deficits over the last decade, and the $3.1 million money that still has to be paid off. Got to be careful for that anonymous person. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody further?
Anada Fleming, again, on Karen Drive. Again, I want to bring up, why wasn't the community notified about the meeting last week when you guys all passed the amendment on paying for the attorney fees? I wasn't notified. I don't know, most people weren't notified. I'm sure most people here didn't even know about it. Number two, when I found out, which was just 2 days ago, from a friend who called me, they said, well, it's a done deal. Yes, it was in the newspaper, and it was a done deal, but there was nothing to notify anybody, not even an anonymous person,
Okay.
to let me know
I'll
that
say this.
I should have been here at this meeting, even though I knew I couldn't be here.
I don't know how many times I have to say this.
Please tell me again.
I will. We post these meeting minutes and at the same location every or meeting agenda, not meeting minutes. Meeting agenda at the same location every 2 weeks. We have an email distribution list. We've attempted many, many, many times to put it on the internet, but the administration hasn't done it on a routine basis.
I'm not on Facebook, so.
I didn't even mention Facebook.
Well.
Now, there is another option. This council could mail this agenda to every resident in the city every 2 weeks. It costs about $3,000 per mailing citywide. If you think that's an appropriate expenditure, we can talk about it.
No more than the television in the room. Maybe perhaps just putting it on the billboard. Discussion about paying attorney fees. Or having it delayed,
Listen, this is,
to maybe a second, third
okay.
reading.
Thank you for your.
Can I respond?
Thank you.
Please.
I think there's some kind of, somebody's trying to create some kind of narrative that something nefarious is happening. This is just how things work. It costs a lot of money you can't send out a $3,000 mailer with the agenda every week. Okay. Well, we do our best, and any communication that comes from any one of us, we have to pay out of our own pocket for political reasons, right? The city, and if we send something by the city, we all have to agree to pay that. Like the letter we did with the mayor to send before the issues. But it just seems like this narrative people are trying to make in this room, like something happened that was like out of the ordinary. Nothing happened. Nothing was trying to be pushed through. This happens all the time. Like I said, I'm new here. Things get put on emergency for millions of different reasons. Things just get passed through. When council decides they want to do something, they just do it. We don't go out of our way to promote any issue other than any other one, and every resident is available to get them at any time. So I don't want people to get the idea incorrectly that there was some kind of like secret plan to like come on, it doesn't exist. It's not real. It's just the way things work.
Thank you, Jim. And I also want to mention one more thing, too. This certainly, by no stretch of the imagination, is the first time that legal fees are being paid. Mayor Delacour was a huge recipient of the city paying legal fees. Law Director Pignatello, former police chief John Fetchko, dozens of councilmen had been sued in the city of Seven Hills, if you look at your history. It equates to hundreds of thousands of... Law Director Pignatello is being sued right now by a resident regarding deer hunting. He's not paying for those fees, nor should he. He is being sued in his official capacity as the law director. If we could go back 30 years and find possibly over $1 million of legal fees that the city has paid out because of its elected officials in legal lawsuits and other issues. I'll leave it at that. I mean, that is, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Rich. Is that accurate? Has the city paid out hundreds of thousands of dollars to cover legal fees for members of the administration and council members over the course of 30, 40 years?
100.
Benkowski was 200 alone.
Right.
No,
Well, everything else total wouldn't be another 100, in my opinion.
so hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is nothing new, guys. I don't even know where we are in this meeting.
Public comment.
Is there any further public comment? Okay. Reports and communications from the Mayor and Safety Director, Mayor Delacour.
Thank you, Mr. President.
My pleasure.
Let me first begin by saying this. For anyone who wishes to receive a copy of council's agenda, the council clerk maintains a list of email addresses. You can submit to her your email address and you will be added to that list. It doesn't cost the city a penny. So much to respond to. You can certainly tell that the 2017 council elections are just around the corner. The revisionist history that's being presented tonight is enough to make one's head spin. So I will attempt to limit my remarks on what has already been an unnecessarily long evening and touch upon just a couple of things, although I can tell you my head is spinning listening to some of the things that I've heard here tonight. I'll first begin with this. The city has been engaged in a regular series of crack sealing endeavors for a number of years. In fact, it came up in the last mayoral election. It's a constant. So I don't know where that's going. The deer issue. My administration and I personally spent at least a couple of years or more working with the mayors of our surrounding communities and the ODNR, making trips to Columbus, lobbying, trying to develop a consensus in the community. That consensus was not developable until very recently. It was roughly about a 50-50 split between those who saw the deer as a blessing and those who saw the deer as a detriment to the city and felt that something should be done. After many lobbying efforts with ODNR, we were ultimately able to convince them to institute a new program, a municipal deer culling program, nuisance program, similar to what is done in agricultural areas and had been done for many years, where the owner of a farm whose crop is perhaps being damaged by an overpopulation of deer was permitted to approach the state, obtain a permit, and reduce the danger to his crop. As a result of our lobbying efforts, we were able to convince the ODNR to institute a similar program. That's the program that the half-dozen communities, including ours, passed very recently and is being instituted now as we speak. So to say that we've been somehow remiss in overlooking the deer population is at best a gross exaggeration. No administration exists in a vacuum. Those who sit in my seat after me and those who preceded me are all intertwined in one way or another with respect to the problems that we face, the issues that we're confronted with, how we address them, what we inherit from others, and how we attempt to move the city along in the best direction possible with the help and guidance of our council. The Finance Department confirmed several years ago that the known debt associated with the recreation center, soup to nuts, from construction to financing to interest to the roof repair, lost revenue as a result of the roof repair, the known debt is about $20 million. We have just over 5,000 households in our community. That translates roughly to just under $4,000 per household over the life of that pay down of that $20 million debt. Now that's just the known debt. There are other construction issues there that have yet to be remedied. We've presented some engineering studies to council previously. A giant issue is the failure to install properly a vapor barrier that prevents the communication of very humid air between the different parts of the rec center, and it actually precipitates through the wall and affects the structural integrity, especially in the wintertime when that water freezes. It endangers the structural integrity of the building. That certainly is going to be a big fix, if an expensive fix, if we ever get to the point where we decide to address that. Very early on in the life of the recreation center, it was discovered that the roof was failing. It had to be removed and replaced. About $1 million of that expense was covered by insurance. Now, I know there have been some claims out there that, the roof had these problems as a result of issues besides construction or design. I don't know anybody in the audience who can identify an insurance company that will just write you $1 million check without establishing some causation. So we had to eat a couple $1 million there to get that thing resolved. So there's a lot of positioning going on up here, and I appreciate that. I understand it. However, we're not entitled to our own facts. One of the things that I have found very troubling is this constant drumbeat about the debt restructuring that was done, 11, 12 years ago. That was recommended to the city by experts that were hired from Columbus. I forget the name. I think it might be Baum and Associates. I may be wrong on that. I'm sorry? The information and the analysis that they provided to the city indicated that the city, because of our then financial situation due to the accumulating debt, much of which resulted from the problems with the recreation center, as well as other issues, an insufficient amount of revenue to cover current operating expenses. The recommendation to the city at that time was to restructure our debt. Now, the finance department and this Baum firm did an analysis. That analysis, and I'm doing this from memory, indicated that the total cost of that restructuring to the city was somewhere between $900,000 to $1 million. Now, somehow this number of $3 million is being constantly floated. All I can assume is that the people who are putting out that narrative are ignoring the several years of savings that the city had and was forced to try to achieve during some very lean times here. So for the first few years of that debt restructuring, the city was able to reduce the amount of debt. And that's how we get to the point where we were able, with some very difficult, admittedly, one-time measures, to get through that difficult period of time. So there's a failure to recognize that there was a savings up front, and that's all been baked in already. So now, yes, there's an expense to us now, but it's as a result of the savings back then. Unfortunately, I have to throw a little bit of water on the assertion that there will not be further levies within the next couple of years. It is fair to say and accurate to say that the city will not be, hopefully, asking for new money in that time. However, I would remind council that the current trash levy is due to expire in a couple of years. And again, I'm doing this from memory. Please excuse me if I don't have the exact number. I believe the trash levy generates about $1.2 million annually. That levy, if not renewed in a couple of years, will compel the city to pay out of its general fund that 1.2 or whatever the current expense is at that point to pick up our rubbish and our leaves, by the way. So yes, as we sit here today, it's likely that we're not going to be asking for new money. However, if we don't ask for a renewal of that trash levy within those couple of years, we're certainly going to be back in the position that we are in today. And it's for that reason that I cannot support a borrowing of $3 million in 2017 to, I'm sorry?
I laughed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I cannot support a borrowing of $3 million in 2017.
Thank you.
I would remind council that issue 91 and issue 92 money, I'm sorry?
Thank you. I heard exactly what you said, but the mayor's got the floor. The mayor's got the floor. The mayor's got the floor.
I would remind council that the income tax generated from the recently passed tax measure will not be fully realized until 2018 because of the pipeline effect. That money is not even going to be paid in entirely until mid-18. Roughly, again, rough number, probably about $180,000 roughly is generated in 2017 out of that income tax levy. Perhaps, because we always pay our real estate taxes a half year late, perhaps $900,000, $800,000 of the property tax will be generated in 2017. So benefit of the doubt, let's say that's 1.1 million coming in 2018. That 1.1 million doesn't even cover the deficit that this council passed in 2016. So we're just treading water in 2017. And that all assumes that there will not be an increase of the collective bargaining agreements, which are all due to be renegotiated this year. We computed a few years ago that for each 1% increase, there's about a $50,000 additional expense to the city. So we have now 4 unions that we are negotiating with, I think we're negotiating with, I hope we are. Those are all subject to further negotiation. So for those reasons, I think we need to be a little bit careful about going out and borrowing more money when we know that we are already facing some significant challenges. I want to talk a little bit about the placement on the ballot of 91 and 92, which I supported. I would remind council that in 2014, a similar measure was placed on the ballot, which the voters at that point defeated. That was the police levy in 2014. As I've said previously, the fire levy really is nothing more than the police levy on steroids. However, it's a good thing that it passed. It certainly will help the city. But, you know, nothing new under the sun. I had hoped that I would not have to say a whole lot more about 118, but some of the things that I'm hearing, I have yet to hear an explanation for how the city is morally obligated to pay the legal fees of an individual who pleads guilty to a crime in the city. Now, there's been a point made that, well, the city has covered other legal fees for other city officials. That's an entirely different situation. Those officials were sued privately in civil actions by individuals for claimed actions or omissions while serving in their official capacity. Those are civil actions. This is a completely different animal. We're comparing two different things here. I never expected that veto would be upheld. I felt it was important, though, and we finally had it tonight, that there be a full exposition with regard to everyone's justification for making the decision that they made. No one likes seeing any of this. As I mentioned in the caucus room, when the councilman was first charged with all of this, he had everyone's sympathy. And it was for that reason it was never mentioned in that election. I would challenge anyone to point a finger at anyone up here who brought that up as a political issue in that election. And it was because we felt badly for Matt. Now, whether it was right, whether it was wrong, there's a lot of second guessing that always goes on. But I can hold my head up and say that I never brought it up, and I don't regret that. I just can't see how this city is morally obligated to pay those attorney's fees, and so I have to respectfully disagree with the decision that was made tonight. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. Reports from the directors of departments, other officials. Director of Law, Richard Pignatello. Thank you. Director of Public Service and Property, Stuart Levis.
Yes, Mr. President. Leaf collection, again, is proceeding from south to north. We'd like to wrap it up by the end of the month if we can. So I would encourage the residents to rake out any remaining leaves that they want to rake out as soon as they can. And we're chugging along. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Now the council miscellaneous, and I'm going to get this one started tonight. There's a few items that I need to discuss. Not sure how we started talking about the rec center, but back when, and I know people don't like pointing fingers and hearing about history, but history is very important. History is the reason we are where we are today. And for anybody that's in construction or understands construction, you'll know what a punch list is. A punch list is items that are the responsibility of the builder that need to be fixed. And there's usually a certain amount of time that the builder has to complete those items. After my father left the mayor's office, he turned over that punch list to Mayor Binkowski, and there were 20, maybe 30 items that were still needing to be fixed. Not on our dime, on the builder's dime. Some pretty serious things, which, jogging my memory, equated to a lot of money. Guess what happened? Nothing. Not one item on that punch list that was turned over to the next administration during the transition was fixed. So who's to blame? You know, connect the dots. That is 100% fact, and we have a copy of that punch list today. As far as the 2016 budget deficit that council voted on, let's get our facts clear. The way our city works, and I would assume every city, the mayor, regardless of who it is, whether it's our current mayor, Mayor Binkowski, my father, any mayor prior, the mayor submits the budget to city council, and it's council's responsibility to accept it, reject it, or change it. Under Councilman Frondorf's Finance Committee budget hearings, we carved out approximately $400,000 of the budget deficit that was handed to us. That budget deficit that we were given was $1.35 million. Now, I'm sure most people are aware of us carving out money because a number of you were at meetings that were upset with some of the decisions we were making. Some at the rec center, possibly some in the service department when we were laying people off, and it goes on and on. But we did what we could to stop the bleeding without really affecting the day-to-day lives of our residents. The upcoming budget is going to be a lot different, thanks to the support of our residents with issue 91 and 92. And I'm very excited and grateful that our residents decided to trust us and pass those. Now let's touch on the debt restructuring. I'm going to stand firm and say that the debt restructuring was one of the worst possible things that the city could have done. The reason we had to restructure the debt, and I say we loosely because it was so long ago, is because we were approaching such a horrible financial position. What debt restructuring does is it frees up money today that you have to pay back later. So the council and the mayor at the time restructured. It frees up a ton of money that was available in our general fund. General fund balance was millions of dollars. And instead of saving money and implementing measures like we did tonight, that money was being spent at a very quick pace. Things were good. We're hiring people, giving raises, back raises, all sorts of great things. It was an exciting time. The money was there because they freed it up. They didn't have to pay down the debt for a number of years. But that gets us to where we are today. Those debt payments are now due. We paid our first one this year. We have a small one, and yes, the $293,000 is small, due this year. And after that, it skyrockets up to almost $500,000 a year for 5-6 years till 2023. So understanding what happened yesterday is important to understand what we've done this year and what we're doing tomorrow. History is important because we can't let history repeat itself in our city. We truly were very close to going broke. It was not a joke. It wasn't pie in the sky or political maneuvering. It was a fact. And I can't thank our residents enough for passing these levies, because this council would have continued making very difficult decisions, and we would have done everything we could to balance the 2017 budget, whether that means laying off, restructuring. There's a million different things. That's the past. Let's look forward now. What this council did tonight, I'm so appreciative of everybody on this council for supporting these ideas. We did today what should have been done a long time ago. We are setting aside 5% of annual income tax collections to a dedicated street maintenance fund. Projected annual revenue, once it's all collected, is $250,000 a year. We created a rainy day fund for setting aside 2% of income tax collections, equating to $100,000 a year. We created a fund for capital improvements, just 1% of annual income tax collections, projected annual revenue, $50,000. We transferred $293,000 out of the general fund to the debt service fund to take care of our second, actually, balloon payment that's coming due. Transferred $50,000 into parks. $100,000 is being dedicated to crack sealing. Now, the crack sealing, the city has done very, very minimal crack sealing. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And the evidence, drive around the streets, period. Many members of council campaigned very hard on issues 91 and 92. And one thing that we heard loud and clear is people want to see tangible results. everything we're doing with money is extremely important, but it's not sexy. It's not something that people can get excited about because you don't see it, you can't touch it, you can't feel it. This council is comfortable borrowing $3 million to implement a 2017 road resurfacing program. Borrowing $3 million increases our debt service payments, but because of the vote of our residents, we can now afford that. The streets that, let me backtrack a second. Our city engineers have a ranking of every street in the city from very poor to excellent. And we are focusing on streets that are rated very poor and poor. Now, the streets that we're proposing that we resurface next year are Applewood from Walnutwood to Oakwood, Cindy Lane, Firethorn, Forest Overlook from Karen to the end, the remaining portion, Gale Drive, Joy Oval, Oakwood, Orchard View, Parkgate Oval, Vesper, Walnutwood, and possibly East Parkway from Northview to East Dartmoor, contingent upon available funds. The estimated cost of those is about $2.7 million, and we have to factor in our engineering fees, which is 12%, gets us roughly to about $3 million. On top of all these things that we're doing to get our city back to where it needs to be and where frankly it should be, we have an incredibly exciting future ahead of us. For the past almost year now, a number of us have been working closely with a group called LSB, and this group is in the beginning, well, hopefully the middle stages, approaching the end stages of breaking ground on a new development on Rockside Road. It's been quite a ride and a long process, but when this development is built, it's going to help us significantly. There's about 50 acres that you guys own, correct? 54 acres, and this development is going to consist of retail, high-end apartments, hotel, restaurants, townhomes, and senior living. When all is said and done and this project is fully built out, the projected revenue to Seven Hills between income tax and property tax is between $600,000 and $700,000 a year. If things continue progressing as they are, I hope that the LSB portion will be completed in 3, maybe 4 years. And as more land gets acquired, I hope there's an opportunity to expand that as well. In addition, there is another group, Glenn's Landing, that has brought plans to the city for additional senior living facilities. I honestly don't know how much revenue that's going to bring to the city. The estimates I've heard just don't add up, but that's a story for another day. But you know, one day that will also generate revenue as well. So what's going on in our city is really exciting right now. Past is over. You know, things did not go well for about 12 years, and most of it was financial. But that's changing, and the residents and council did it together, and we all need to take credit for that. Moving forward, I can guarantee that this council will continue watching every penny. I do believe that there is more room for additional reductions and things that we do not necessarily need. And I also think that Seven Hills has been running pretty much the same way for about 50 years. We run a very antiquated organization. Times are changing, and they're changing quick. And I do believe that it's time that we start looking at, honestly, restructuring our operations at City Hall. This world moves fast, and it just continues moving quicker and quicker and quicker. And we need to get up to date with 21st century operating procedures. And I believe that there's going to be a lot of ideas floated in the very near future, and there'll be lively discussions, probably more vetoes, but we're going to continue moving forward to do what we believe is in the best interest of the future of Seven Hills. With that, I will pass the floor on to my colleagues. Councilman Frondor.
I can't pass that opportunity up.
I'm sorry, Tim, can I cut you off for a moment? I forgot. There's a reason Jeff Grafe and Alan are here today. We had a public hearing at 6:30 this evening regarding the Planning Commission's recommendation for the pre-application of the plan for the Rockside Crossings. We all received a very large binder, and I'm sure everybody reviewed it thoroughly, and we had an opportunity to discuss it. City Council needs to accept that, so I'm going to make a motion to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation for application for the pre-development plan for Rockside Crossings at Seven Hills.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
The City Council has accepted the Planning Commission's recommendation. Sorry to keep you here so long. All right, thank you. Councilman Frondor.
Yeah. It's been- What? Hey, we do this every 2 weeks. I mean, you're more than welcome.
Or you can watch it live on TV.
Yeah. And I'll be brief because it's been a long evening, but make no mistake about it. What's done on this dais is hard work. I mean, it's hard work. And decisions, as Councilman Traffus said, have to be made. Sometimes they're not the most popular decisions, but as a group, we try to make the decision with the city in mind, and not necessarily a ward, individual, or position, but with the city in mind. That's why we're here tonight. To give you an example of when I say this is hard work, the amount of money that we have discussed tonight, the bits and pieces that Councilman Traffus mentioned, the road program, taking money from our general fund to our debt retirement fund, $4.3 million that we discussed tonight. $4.3 million. So this is not for the faint of heart. When we make a decision, we're talking about that magnitude of funding. And sometimes, sometimes for better or for worse, you just have to make that tough decision. So that's what this council has done over the past year, quite frankly. I'm just going to mention a couple other things. Something that, the debt restructuring. That was done in 2011, and it freed up $600,000 a year, which we have to pay back, in addition to principal. And the interesting thing about it was the mayor referred to the bond company that helped us with that. Well, I saw the document. I read the document, and in the document there was one of the individuals that was working on the restructuring made a statement and said, this is back in 2011, Seven Hills, you have a big financial issue on the horizon. And what she meant by that is you're freeing up the money now, but you need to bring additional income in. Additionally, the last 3 years, our finance director, when we have our budget hearings, in his cover letter to council and to the mayor, has said year after year after year, we need more revenue. We have on the horizon some very severe financial issues. Well, we did what we felt we needed to do, and we had to roll the dice. And who was it that said, I think Tony, you said, we took a risk. We had to make a decision. Anyone out in the audience want to venture, want to be in this position and say, all right, the future of the city is on this fire levy, and it's on this income tax, and guess what? We have to convince the people, our residents, why it's important. And if it fails, then what Councilman Traffus mentioned was going to happen. So, yeah, we rolled the dice, but you know what? You want to talk about being arrogant? I wasn't afraid of it, quite frankly, because I knew that we were doing the right thing. Another thing that the city did was we sold our assets. It's like in your house, you say, well, I need money to operate, so I'm going to sell my refrigerator. I'm going to sell my washer. I'm going to get rid of the kid's swing set. Well, we sold our cell tower leases for 50 cents on the dollar. And we would have still been generating monies from those cell tower leases, except, in my opinion, this is my opinion, the previous councils didn't want to do the hard work, and they didn't want to make those tough decisions that needed to be made. And I think probably more importantly was they didn't want to do the hard work. It takes work to do this. And then the mayor talked about, he said he's not in favor of this road program, $3.1 million road program. Well, I can tell you that I attended town hall meetings that the mayor hosted, in which he said, and he had, wonderful PowerPoint presentation. He's probably still got it in his archives, about how important it was to have some sort of a road program or road maintenance program, because if you don't do it now, it costs you double a few years down the road. And, I've seen that graphic a number of times. So now we take a chance, we roll the dice, we were lucky, fortunate, I don't know, call it what you will, things worked out. And now we've got monies, and yet, and what do the people want? They want what Councilman Traffus said, tangible results of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you tangible results. And what you've heard tonight, quite frankly, is the genesis of how that's going to work, and it's going to go forward. And quite frankly, when this council is gone 10 years from now, hopefully, these ordinances and provisions and processes will be in place for future generations. So again, I can't stress it enough. This is really, really hard work, and I'm really proud of, quite frankly, the talent that we have on this council that is so varied that it basically we all complement each other in one way or another. And I truly believe if it wasn't for the dynamics here, the personalities, well, this city, the income tax wouldn't have passed, or there wouldn't have been an initiative on the ballot. And quite frankly, there probably wouldn't have been a fire levy on the ballot, and people would have said, well, we'll kick the can down the road and hope for the best, and maybe somebody will figure out how to grow a money tree in back of City Hall. So I'm going to close by saying I thank you guys for doing all the hard work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilman Petro.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one comment since we're talking about the fate of the city and how we got to this point. The other thing that wasn't really touched on was all the jobs that were created. Full-time engineering department, building, senior citizens coordinator, overstaffing in the service department. It all added up that we had for approximately 10 years. So I just wanted to bring that up too.
Frank, I'm really glad you mentioned that. One of the biggest things was our service department. For many years, I think they had about 16 guys, and then it ballooned about 23 guys, and figure they're making 55,000 a year plus benefits plus everything else. That is a huge amount of money. And Frank, you're absolutely right that all the new positions that were created just drained our reserves.
Engineering was, if I'm just remembering, it's about 300,000 a year.
Right.
Go 10 years.
Yep, good point. And we're going to continue looking at avenues in which we can save money that way.
And then we had senior citizens coordinators that we paid $4,000 a year. Now we're paying them 45. Granted that the job expanded a little bit where they had the Meals on Wheels and, whatever else they do, got part of the home days, but that was all volunteer too.
Right.
And that all turned into full-time positions.
Yep, you're right. Thank you. Councilman Kukrow.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief. My wife had dinner on the table about 8:30. She texted me.
She knows better.
I'm a pretty straight shooter. Sir, I think it was Bill on Hillside. You would have liked my Uncle Mike. I think you and him were very much alike, and I'm the same way, which is you're going to show me. What was it, you? What was your name, sir? But the other one behind you. Bill, I got it right. All right. It was show me, right? I grew up the fourth kid in the family. It was show me. You're going to get stuff done. And that's what this council's done. That's what I plan on doing up here. It's tough. I said it multiple times tonight. You're getting arrows from the left, arrows from the right. I got former council people coming up and questioning me. And that's fine. I can take it. I'm a big boy. But when it's really just politically, man, aren't we done with that in this city? I mean, really, when are we going to move on and just literally just move this city forward? We've tried so hard up here. How are we going to keep good people in this city when this kind of stuff continues on? The mayor doesn't want to have the road program now. It's like my mind exploded up here. It is, I don't know how to say it, but what you guys are witnessing and what you're seeing is the last remnants of a group of people who are so politically controlled in this city and just want everything to fail that we're doing. It's just mind blown. And I'm not feeling well tonight, so it's even worse. Plus, I haven't eaten, which I could use tonight. So I think what you should do, and everyone watching this should just think to themselves, are we in a better place than we were a year ago before this council took over? And if you smell a rat, what do you think? Look in your gut and figure out what happened in the past. We don't have to keep bringing it up, but look what happened. We won't bring it up anymore. I won't, at least. And just wait for the proof, because the proof is coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Kranek.
I have nothing, thank you.
Councilman Bicker.
I just want to thank everybody for sticking with us to the wee hours of the evening.
Thank you. Councilman Biassiata.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll too try to be brief, but the situation calls for some comments tonight. I didn't care for the comment that disparaged the fact that I do get a lot of emails. I've cultivated throughout, from the time I started campaigning, I have a rather large email list, and I went through my own expense to make sure every voting resident in Ward 1 has my phone number. So, for better or worse, I do get a lot of feedback, and I'm giving you a positive example of that. A couple months ago, the residents on Dorset and Chatham reached out, said they were telling me an inordinate amount of power failure in their neighborhood, and they weren't getting any feedback from First Energy. I got involved, put my bull hat on, got the residents together. One of them even taught them how to get in touch with the PUCO. And a couple weeks ago, what the result of that was, First Energy did a reliability study for the neighborhood and found out that neighborhood was losing power greater than their peers. This is not the job of the city councilman, at least I didn't know it was, but because people feel comfortable contacting me and I act upon their concerns, those two streets now have new underground wire that went in about 2 weeks ago. Now, the bad side of that is the people on Essex found out about it, and 2 of them called me today. Now they want the new underground wire. But you know what? I contacted First Energy, and they agreed to do another reliability study. So I'm busting my butt. And now the comment, here's the other thing. I didn't do anything to curry in anybody's favor. We voted through today. 221 pieces of legislation has passed this council. And I have voted for all but 4 of them. That is 97%. So to take comment when one time I stick up for my fellow residents is just that it makes me ill. Because in the beginning of the year, the comments were all, keep up what you're doing, council, you need to make some cuts. And I listened to them then, and I'm listening to them now, and I'm gonna listen to them tomorrow. And that's that. If people don't like it, well, they'll say what all these guys say. Vote me out. But the reality is, I told the people I'm gonna listen. In the beginning of the year, we had a whole bunch of people in the front row telling me, all Ward 1 residents, that this is the change they wanted, and I listened to them. And over the last 2 weeks, Ward 1 residents contacted me again, like is their norm, and for whatever reason, I couldn't convince them. And I'm not going to go against them because that's not my job. I represent these people, and I'm proud of it, and I'm going to keep working hard. Hopefully this is the last we ever talk about that one thing. I'm not even going to mention the ordinance number because there's so many good things going on in the city now. And I'm happy to be a part of it. And people are working together. When we went through that line item budget, I grabbed bull by the horns just like everyone else. You know, we removed $200,000 from that budget, and $20,000 of it minimum was at my suggestions. Back to all the cuts but one. You know, we're going to do the work. I'm going to be transparent. I've sent out over 20 some emails now, and that's really facilitated a good following. People talk to me about anything. And I get back to them right away, and I don't regret that. So I'm not going to read the emails like my gut reaction that I would have done on the schoolyard, because I want to just keep focusing on the positive. And that's that. I think it's a bright future ahead. And like I said earlier in the year to a number of residents at the Holiday Inn, the best way forward is for everyone to stay engaged. Keep giving your ward councilmen and your at-large people feedback. I'm on the Parks Committee. We're going to do some exciting things. Jim's going to bring forth some ideas soon. He's looking for feedback. I mean, these are the kind of things now that us as representatives want to be able to do. And it's a culmination of a lot of factors. So kudos to my colleagues. And when I said, I hope you understood when I said you took a risk earlier, that was a compliment. That was
We know.
okay. Thank you. But the one on the flip side of that, you know, I also agree. I'm sick too. Not emotional. This is a cold, but if I couldn't ditch this vote, it would look suspicious. First time a lot of people have ever seen me with glasses as well. You have to look back to know where you're going. You got to learn and move forward. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the one thing, though, we can all improve upon is how we do that. You know, there's a civil way to do it. And I think the residents will respond better to that. They're responding good now. Most of the people I keep hearing, you know, Tony, you're doing good. Keep up the good work. Keep up the fight. You know, we need you. And, you know, that keeps me going. But it's a lot of work. You know, I spent my whole lunch hour on the phone with First Energy today. No, I wasn't ever even going to bring that up because there's a lot of things I do behind the scenes, and I just prefer it that way. Just those are when you can help people. That's a good thing. When you can move the city forward, that's a good thing. And if I'm going to take a couple shots along the way, I'd rather it not happen because I spent my whole life building up a good reputation. But if that's what it takes to move the ball forward, you know, then so be it. I look forward to the next budget review process, and I look forward to tackling any tough issues, but I rather there not be tough ones. Sorry for rambling. I try to keep these comments short, but a lot on my mind tonight. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. And I know you spent an hour on the phone with First Energy. I spent 45 minutes on the phone today with a resident who was upset that a neighbor cut a tree down. So.
Can I make a joke?
Yeah.
Was the tree on the tree lawn by chance?
Yeah. I knew you'd appreciate
No comment.
that.
No comment.
Last thing before we adjourn, if everybody wants to help us with something, there is one thing that we need residents to put pressure on City Hall about. A couple years ago, we did something really great. We replaced our tornado sirens. They are old and antiquated, and we got new sirens. We spent $300,000, and what that did was that saved us $90,000 a year because the old ones were hooked up to telephone lines, and we were paying a ridiculous amount of money. It's a great return on investment. Just a few years into it, we'll make that money back through all the savings. Here's the problem council's having. 2 years ago, we got those. They still don't work. Our fire department and administration has not completed the job. For 2 years, we've had no tornado sirens. If you want to help us, come back and put pressure on the city to get that done. We need help. We've been trying and it's not getting done. So, food for thought. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Biassiata.
Yes.
Frondor.
Yes.
Kranek.
Yes.
Kukrow.
Yes.
Petro.
Yes.
Traffus.
Yes.
Bicker.
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned.
Sure. Rick, who are here?
Thanks. I said, wrap up at the end of this
Yeah. It's late though, you know, it's really. It's when I get home. Oh, you know. No. I do a lot of things when I get home. We'll talk someday.